Alright, welcome back to the channel for episode number 4. My name is Denny, and today I'm going to show you how I light a talking head in the most simple way. Actually, the techniques I'm going to talk about apply to every situation, not only talking head. I'm going to explain everything you need to think of before even touching a camera or a light. Where to position the subject, the camera, the light, what you should look for and what you should avoid. By the end of this episode, you will know how to get a nice looking frame, no matter the location or the gear that you have. Because knowledge is way more valuable than any gear. And that's exactly what I'm trying to bring to you with this channel. If you have a lot of gear and zero knowledge, your image will look bad anyway. If you have a lot of knowledge and no gear, you can still manage to have something halfway decent and save the day. If you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of gear, well, congratulations to you. Alright, as for the previous episode, this is a response to a comment asking this. Can you break down the talking head? It looks so good. Yes, I can. Also, feel free to comment and to ask questions in the comment section, as it could serve as inspiration for future episodes. Alright, let's do it! Do it, of course, with a French accent. Oh yes. Here we are in my living room. First question, what do I want it to feel like? I know I want a cozy and warm interior feeling with the cold daylight outside. Then, second question, where do I set the action? In this case, meaning the subject, which is myself and my head. I know I want it to be lit with natural daylight. So I want to be sit next to a window and I want to see a part of that window in the frame. Why? 1. Because I want it to serve as a motivation for my light. And 2. Because every time you see a window, you know that the wall next to it will be dark, which gives me contrast. And contrast is what we want. Contrast is what we demand. Contrast is your best friend. So be sure to treat him well and to always take it with you. So it gives us two options. Either this window or this one. Which one is going to give me most depth? This one, certainly not. Why? Because I would have a flat wall just behind me, and flatness is your enemy. You have to fight against it at all costs. It's the same thing with boring white walls. Avoid them as much as you can. What we want the most is depth, textures, and contrast. I would say those are the main things to look for. Of course, I have white walls, but I will not paint it just for this episode. So now I have only one option left, which is this window. Next step, I know I want the corner of the room in the frame. So it will be this little angle, which will bring a three-dimensional aspect to the frame, where if I was in front of a flat wall, the image would look only in 2 dimensions. Based on what we are looking for, this spot at the table seems a perfect match for the subject. Now that we know where the subject is going to sit, where do I put my camera? Let's choose a lens first. We'll use a 28mm and position the camera here. Perfect. We want, of course, the window to serve as a motivation. Also, I want to see a little bit of the other room, which gives me more depth, and I have another window in the background, which gives me, again, a point of contrast. One thing to keep in mind about windows is to avoid the sun, the sky, or a front lit element like the wall of the house just in front. Here you can see it. If I have the sky in the frame, I have to bring down my exposure to avoid my highlight from clipping, which will make the interior way too dark. In this case, I will need more powerful light in order to properly expose the subject's face. By avoiding those, I can raise my interior exposure, so I don't need a powerful light anymore, because I raised the ambient. Oh, and I was almost forgetting the most important part, which is planning at the right time of day. For example, for this spot right here, I know that in the morning there will be way too much light on this wall, and in the mid-afternoon, this window just behind will be completely blown out by the sun. Which means I have to shoot this at the precise time of day. You see, it's very important to know the sun's path for every scene you're shooting. We have the position of the subject, the position of the camera, but in my opinion, there's way too much information in the frame. Let's clean the set by removing the plant and the guitars. Now the image looks way cleaner. We know what to look at. The subject is popping a little bit more in regard of the background. Let's also close all the windows blinds that are not in the shot, so we can remove some of the ambient light and create, again, more contrast. I think you get it now, I love contrast. Okay, now let's expose the image. And we expose based on what we can't control. In this case, the light outside. I turn on false color to expose it exactly where I want it, which means at least one full stop over the level of where skin tones should be. And if you don't know why, we'll talk about it in episode number 2, so go check that out. The problem now is that my subject is not very well exposed, which means we need a light. But what kind? I would say for this really simple and fast setup, I would usually use an LED with a giant softbox and a grid to control the light. Although I don't use it anymore for narrative stuff, I'll still use them for my YouTube setup as it's the simplest option. And talking about simple, let's talk about the light I'm going to use, which is... wait for the magic trick. Ta-da! This little body is the Molus G200. Actually, it's a light that zhiyun sent me, which immediately, when I opened the box, blew my mind by its size. I mean, come on! I had the 200 watt LED under my hat. It's crazy. It's f***ing crazy. Actually, I think I could keep this light under my hat every day. You know, in case in my everyday life I need to light something really quick, you know. What am I even saying again? I'm crazy. One thing I have to say though, is that I really wasn't familiar with this brand, but I really loved this little light. And as a matter of fact, it became my main key light for my YouTube setup, or in some situation where I need a very light gear. It also proved to be really handy in a lot of different situations where I didn't have enough place to put a stand. I mounted it for this shot, for example, where I rigged the light to a shower curtain rod in order to have a little backlight and to light the inside of this piano. For this shot, it was rigged to a door just outside of frame, basically everywhere, as it's so small and light. If you're interested, you can find the link of this one in the description below with the 10% off. Alright, let's continue in our little situation here. We set up this light with a giant softbox with the grid to control the light just outside of frame. The closer, the softer. And with the help of false color, we are going to increase the power until my skin sits where I want it to. Of course, you can control the light with an app. Okay, here looks great. 15%. Of course, I'm not really using this light for this episode, otherwise I couldn't show it to you. But that's for sure what I'm going to use for my YouTube setup from now on. As a reminder, I'm going for a realistic look, as if the window was really lighting me. So my face should be darker than the outside light. Again, as I said in episode number 2, the light is at an angle of 45 degrees relative to my face, which creates what is called a Rembrandt lighting, which is this little triangle. Yes, just right there. Also, the camera is on the far side, which simply explained means that the camera is facing the dark part of my face. The opposite of that will be called near side lighting and also called front light, which means that the camera is facing the other side, the bright side of my face. I guess you know which one I prefer, I think. One thing very important as well is to be sure that your subject have a nice highlight, which we have, yes, we have there. Now for a more dramatic effect, I could use a flag to have this dark side even darker. Or I could go with a bounce, or another light directly pointing at the ceiling to raise the general ambient light. But I like it there, so let's keep it really simple with just one light, and that's it. Now, one last step. I like to add a practical, to create a separation between me and the dark background. It creates color contrast, as you can see, and brings some warmness into our frame, just as we wanted. In my opinion, this is enough as a separation, so I don't really need a proper backlight. I mean, we're not in the 90s anymore, guys. Get over it. No, I'm joking. Actually, those are my favorite movies, so... Also, you see how the darkest part of my face is in front of the brightest part of the background, and the brightest part of my face is in front of the darkest part of the background. By thinking about all the steps we just did, we created the checkerboard lighting we were talking about in episode number 3. So go check this one as well. So we created interest in the frame with those little pockets of contrast. You see? Dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, and dark. If we wanted to, and if it was a narrative work, we could add an element in the foreground for more depth. But it's not really necessary here for a simple talking head like this one. We could also record a close-up as a second angle, as I did with this interview for Fabrizio. Which, by the way, makes the best Napolitan pizza in the world. E sono italiano, so I know what I'm talking about. Alright, we have our final image here, which is my usual talking head. I usually record in B-roll, and the frame looks like this. We just have to convert the B-roll to Rec 709, to color grade to my liking, and we are done. So here's every steps we did from start to finish, in order to always have a nice looking frame. That's also my Italian part. That's alright. And that's really my approach to lighting in every project I work on. So, what do I want it to look and feel like? What's the best time of day to shoot it, relative to the sun? Search for the best angle that provides most depth by using the corner of the room, by adding a foreground element, or by opening a door to open the space, or by searching for natural contrast. Next, motivate the light. Avoid very bright elements in the frame. I mean, if you don't have enough power to light against it. 5, 6? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Expose what you can't control. Then augment what's already there to expose it properly. Control the contrast with a negative feel, a bounce, or by raising the ambient light, or even just by closing all the blinds that you can't see. Then separate the subject from the background and create a checkerboard lighting. That's all the steps we just did. And with this in mind, you'll be able to always have a nice looking frame, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, or even what you are. So yeah, I hope you learned something. If yes, and you want to have this channel grow, don't forget to subscribe and to tell me what you think about it in the comment section. And I'll see you in the next episode. Ciao!